You are listening to the Mark Guzman Podcast Experience. So the more and more I do these Real Realtor episodes, I'm just loving it. I'm loving the advice. I'm loving the tips that all these different agents are providing. So Real Realtors is becoming an extremely valuable podcast series for every real estate agent to listen to. Tons of good information, and it gives you insight into how a lot of these new and experienced agents do their business. And you can get a lot of value, so please enjoy my guest here, Colin Davies. Okay, so welcome to another episode of Real Realtors. My guest today is Colin Davies. He's with Security Pacific Real Estate, been in the business now for 4 years.
4 years.
Awesome. Congratulations. Many agents don't survive the first 2 years. Those are the toughest
Wow,
years.
they are. They really are tough when you start, you know. I'm glad I made it 4 years so far. Got a long way to go.
So you remember when you started?
I do remember when I started.
So what got you into real estate to begin with?
Sure.
Because you come from a completely different background.
It is. It's you know, I think it's kind of it's been a long journey to get to real estate. You know, growing up, never would have thought I'd be in real estate. You know, that was not even on the radar for me. My main background is in restaurants and the service industry there. And that goes back to, you know, being 14, 15, working at a camp, working in the kitchen, and then throughout school and college working in, you know, crepe shops, different restaurants, and then eventually landing in a restaurant in Hawaii, where then I was 6-7 days a week out there when I was in my 20s. And loved the business and just loved everything about it. And, you know, one of the biggest attractions to me working in the restaurant industry was, you know, you get tips, right? So I've worked jobs that, you know, you're paid by the hour and you know, you have a limit on your paycheck of what you can get. And I don't like that. I like having, not having a limit on it, right? So, yeah, restaurants is where I got my start.
Okay. How has the food industry or the restaurant industry really helped you in real estate?
Sure. I think it's actually helped me tremendously. You know, the biggest thing about restaurants is your interaction with people, right? And you never know who's going to come in that day. You know, if you're working maybe an office job, I worked at a company called Matson Navigation as a clerk, and it's the same people that come in every day, and you kind of get a sense of their personalities and how that day is going to go. But with a restaurant, every single day and shift is different, and you're going to get people coming in to celebrate. You're going to get people coming in that are having a bad day. You're going to get people, you know, coming in that are hungry, right? So you're dealing with a lot of different personalities and also emotions throughout that day. And being in the restaurant, what I think makes you successful in a restaurant or do well and be compensated with tips is you can read that person, whether they're having a bad day, right? And that's going to be a lot with body language. That's going to be, you know, how they're carrying themselves. You know, are they, you know, reading the newspaper and don't want to be talked to? So you kind of really have to zone in on where that person's at.
I'm going to be paranoid next time I go eat at a restaurant now.
So, you know, when I started working at a restaurant in Hawaii, it was 2001, and then 2003 is kind of when I was working just like nonstop. And, you know, like I'm saying, you can't really tell what that person's going to be like when they come in. And you get better with experience. And I think at the very foundation, you know, people want to be taken care of, and they want to feel special, and they want you to you know, understand that and then provide that service to them, which I think transitions perfectly over to real estate. You know, for example, if somebody comes in and they're upset and they're in a bad mood, you know, it's maybe they had a bad day or whatever is going on with them, and you need to understand quickly what they want and how you can provide that to them, right? So it's the same thing with real estate. You know, In the beginning, when you start, you're working mostly with buyers, right? Because you don't have that network of connections of people that one that are going to sell their house, or that they're going to trust a brand new agent. Whether that's a family friend or whatever connection you get, you're going to be starting with buyers at the very when you first start off. So it's meeting with those people and kind of doing that same skill set to those buyers that you would apply to restaurants, and find out what they want, right? And listening to them, and really trying to connect with them first. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've gotten from restaurants into real estate. Is just connecting to a person.
It all comes down to the people.
Absolutely.
Connecting, networking with people.
Absolutely.
I keep telling that to everyone, and that's the theme that keeps revolving and coming back on every episode of Real Realtors. It's you have to connect, you have to network with people, and just meet people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, how did the actual transition happen?
Sure.
Like, at what point did you say, I need to get my real estate license?
Okay, that also goes back to restaurant. So I've literally done jobs from dishwasher, prep cook, to busser, to server, to manager, and then ultimately landing at bartender. And with a bartender, you're going to be spending a lot more time with people that are coming in, and that could be an hour. There was a guy who would come in. I met him in 2007. His name's Alan Berm. And he would come in during lunch, have a little salad, maybe a glass of Chardonnay, bowl of soup. He's a real cool, casual guy. And I was like, man, this guy comes in every day for lunch. What does he do? Like, why are you so relaxed? Like, this is legit lifestyle. And very kind. And after getting to know him for a few years, his story was he was working in an auto body shop in Oakland when he was about 26. And him and his friend used to meet at Merritt Bakery. I don't know if it's still open, but it was over by Lake Merritt. And they would meet up, and they're like, how could we, free ourselves from our jobs, and how can we, take what we have and invest it? So they ended up buying properties in Oakland, just as like little rental units. And, they'd buy one and then buy another, and then use that rental income to leverage other properties. So he, after sharing this with me and kind of just opening up, because he started kind of to mentor me, and it's like, Colin, you need to start thinking about buying property. And this is back in I started in 2007 over at the Claremont Hotel.
The crash had just began.
Yes, yeah, and like we had a bunch of layoffs at the hotel, but it's union based. So what ended up happening was I was the last person on that cut before I got to keep my job, and everybody that started after me lost it. So it allowed me to actually work tons of shifts and save up money. And at the same time, home prices just start going down. And Alan would come in, and he's like, Colin, you need to buy property. You need to buy property. I was like, I don't know how to do it. And it's like, okay, this is how you do it. You got to get a lender. You got to go get qualified. And at that time, I was getting serious with a girlfriend of mine, and we were considering moving in together. So we're like, hey, let's try this. So we started looking in Oakland and West Oakland, and we couldn't afford it. And we were turned on to a neighborhood in Richmond. It's called North and East, that one of our family friends was a realtor, showed us a property. It was $175,000 at the time. And we thought, like, this is crazy. We can't afford this. Like, I was paying $500 for a room in my friend's house over by the lake. Allowed us to save, but at the same time, like, I don't know if I'm ready to do this. But it ended up, taking it step by step. We were able to buy a property in 2011 for $175, and we're like, man, this is legit. And the most craziest thing is it had a studio in the back. So we actually were able to rent out that studio that helped support our mortgage.
Nice.
So that kind of got me started thinking. And I still was working at the bar. It was called Paragon at the time. And Alan would continue to come in. And then about a year later, he's like, you know what? It's time for you to get your second property. I was like, okay, how do we do this? He's like, well, you could leverage yourself, refinance the home. You have a little equity. You pull that out, and you could put that, help it to use that as a down payment for whatever else you have saved. So the process starts again. Janet, who's my fiance at the time, she was working at the restaurant. That's where we met. We started saving $250 each week, each of us, and putting it in a shoebox. And we're able to get up to $9,000. And then with the refinance going through, we're able to use that and buy another property in San Pablo as a rental. and from right off the top, we were still cash positive. And by that time, I was like, I need to get my real estate license.
That's
So,
a great story.
so at that point, I started taking classes at Contra Costa College, which is really close to my house. They had one class, I think it was real estate principles. And after taking that class, I started getting more and more interested. I was like, you know what, I can do this. And I ended up taking the remaining 3 classes at Merritt College, also really close by. During the night, if I didn't have a shift, we'd do that and then rework another schedule. And ended up, passing all the classes in a short amount of time, and then ended up getting my license. And that was in the end of 2013.
Great. Now, when you first got into real estate, it's all brand new. Now, you're at this point, it sounds like you were used to buying real estate for yourself. You had a couple of properties now. How was it different now trying to help others buy and sell properties?
Sure. So there is a big difference because, I knew what I wanted and what I liked and kind of what my budget was and what I wanted to stay within. And a lot of the times when you meet somebody, they have a completely different idea of what they want, right? So it's kind of a balancing act too, is because they have an idea of like, okay, I want this. This is how much I want to spend. I want to live in this area. There's things that are important to me. And a lot of the times in the beginning, I was working with couples, right, that had young children. So you had the wife that wanted one thing, and you wanted the husband having one thing, and the wife's maybe her idea was, hey, I want a place that's safe. I want a place that has good schools. I want a place, that has parks. And maybe the husband's like, well, I want something with a man cave. I want something over that when I have my friends over that I'm going to make a good impression on them. So
it's like a balancing act.
It is. It's definitely a balancing act to kind of gauge and understand what they want and what are their goals. And then also to be, okay, is this realistic? Right. And in the beginning, you don't know what you're doing. Like, you understand like, hey, they need a lender, right? And they bring their lender from Iowa, and you have a pre-approval letter, and they're FHA, and they're looking at rehabbed houses. So in the beginning, it's kind of just going through trial and error and really trying to give them what they want. But when you're new in the industry, you don't understand what it takes to make a transaction go through. So, in the beginning, it's a tough business. I know, Mark, you've been in it, what, 15 years now?
14 going on 15, yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, but you're a young guy. How old are you?
I am 37.
37.
Now, so.
Yeah. So I've been in it 14 years myself. I'm in my early 30s, and I figure, well, if I'm here until my 60s for sure, that's another 30 years in this business.
Wow.
Now imagine that expertise. Imagine.
Absolutely.
And every day people are living longer and longer. So same with you and I. I mean, if you think about it, we have a long way to go as far as our career and a lot of things we can do.
That's very exciting just to hear that and have that as a realization. And I love what I do, and I'm sure Mark feels the same, and that allows you to grow in the business. From the very beginning, and me being in it for 4 years, like I'm relatively a brand new agent. When you look at the East Bay and San Francisco and all the agents that have been doing it 30, 40 years and even have their families doing it. So that's a whole lot of expertise. So I'm completely with Mark, where there's so much room to grow and learn, and that's exciting.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of the people that have been doing it for 30, 40, 50 years, remember the average real estate agent is about 58 years old in California, which means a lot of these people will be retiring very soon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now that leaves a lot of business open to a lot of the younger demographic agents. Sure. Now, real estate tends to be a second, third, or even fourth career for many people, which is why the average age is also a lot higher.
Sure.
But the younger you are when you get into the business, the more advantage you have in the long term, because you can build a much longer career and much longer base within real estate.
Absolutely.
So now that you're in it for 4 years, what's something that you currently know that you wish you had known back when you first started?
Sure. So I think this just where for my opinion, my style, like in the beginning, I was very hungry, and that was one to do with I was transitioning out of my job and I needed to pay bills, and it's all of a sudden you're now based on a commission check. So I would do open houses, and I would do whatever I could, and I would take on any client. If I went to an open house and somebody came up to me and said, hey, I'm looking to buy a home in Vallejo or Antioch, and I'm not pre-approved yet, and I'm like, okay, let's do it. And I jump in, and I might not even had a connection with them, or they might not have had a connection with me. And I think that was very valuable to go and work with a person. But a lot of the time it was running all over the Bay Area, showing homes. We find finally a home they like, and then we try to get them pre-qualified, and it's $100,000 less. Or we just weren't vibing, we weren't communicating well, and I slowly learned, like, okay, from an open house, instead of trying to meet somebody who's coming in and looking at the house and say, hi, are you looking for homes in the area? What's your kind of time schedule? Are you working with a realtor? Or kind of going through those standard questions. And I'd see maybe somebody that I look like that I would want to talk to if I was at maybe a party or at a park or a social gathering. And if they were wearing like a Warrior shirt and I watched the game last night, I'd say, hey, how was that game last night? Or try to connect with them, not even about the home, and try to build something besides real estate, and see if we connect, right? And if we connect, then it seemed it naturally progressed into, okay, now what are you looking for? And I think that was huge. Now, a lot of the times at the open houses, if I'm not vibing with somebody, I'm going to be very polite, but I'm not going to waste time on trying to create a relationship with them when somebody else can come in and it's already a natural fit. And that will go through from the beginning of you meeting them throughout the whole transaction. And if it's kind of funky in the beginning, you're probably going to be having problems throughout that whole transaction. So
now, I love what you said there about trying to find some way to connect with the people and then transition afterwards to, well, what is it that you need? Now, I've got a few podcasts I'm putting out this week specifically about social media marketing, because people ask me, how do I get started? What do I do? What do I post? And that's exactly what you do on social media. You connect with people about stuff not even about your business, and then you bring it around to, hey, how can I help you?
Absolutely.
It's all about connecting with people and then eventually
Absolutely.
bringing them value. Exact same thing.
And Mark kills it on social media. I mean, you've tapped into it. How long have you been doing it? Like 3-4 years now with Facebook? And
Facebook? No, actually, a lot of people don't know. I started Facebook in 2010.
okay, wow.
And so I've been doing it 7 years. YouTube videos, 7 years. Now, there's a few periods where I was really inconsistent, and you could see gaps of even 6 months of nothing being posted.
Sure.
So it's a lot of trial and error. And until just a few years ago, I really got serious about it. And even the podcast is brand new. We just started this in August.
Wow.
And this is going to be, I believe, the 56th episode that you're on right now.
That is awesome.
And so
That is awesome.
yeah,
Wow.
and we got plans where 2018, we're going to be posting 7 episodes per week.
That's
And
incredible.
we're just cranking this stuff out because it's all about content. Because, and I've said this a million times to people, the news feed that everyone follows is so packed full of, it's so compact of what they actually see. It's a small percentage.
Sure.
Because so many people are posting so many things every single day.
Sure.
I mean, in every 48 hours, humanity creates as much content as the dawn of time to 2003
Wow.
on the internet.
That's
So you
incredible.
have to be posting.
You
that
have to
often.
I'm a big believer in Facebook and Instagram. Even Snapchat. I'm not up on Snapchat, but the Instagram and Facebook are incredible. I was recommended a book. It's called The Conversion Code, and I think it's by Chris Smith. And started that last week, and I think for the first time, Facebook was getting 1 billion hits a day, right? So like, if you think of like, whether you're watching the news or newspaper, I don't know how many people read the newspaper anymore, but I'm serious. Like, if you have 1 billion people on Facebook and they're going to it multiple times a day, that's the best advertising you could possibly think of. And you could do sponsored ads, you could do blasts, you could do all that, but also you can do it for free as well by just putting yourself out there, right? And Chris Smith in the book The Conversion Code, he mentions like, you want to get engagement on your post, right? And he suggests in I think one of his chapters, he says, simply put on Facebook, how many states have you lived in, right? Now,
I've seen that one go around with a few people.
Okay, and what he says, like, you're gonna get the most engagement you have got on any of your posts.
It's true.
And I was like, thinking to myself, yeah, right. What is this? No way, right? So I posted at like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm starting to get people back and forth, and his thinking is that it's so easy. Somebody doesn't have to put like why or why'd you live in this state or what state, like how many. So you literally you on your phone, it's one thumb stroke. You put 1 or 7, right? And then you already have an engagement right there. You've already got, if you're using it for real estate, say you already got that lead coming in now, engaging with you. Now you could respond to them. Oh, cool, you lived in 2 states. Which states were they in? Now you're personally giving them an attention where they're now going to spend a little more time writing, right? And that can lead to a further conversation, just an engagement. Hey, I haven't seen you in a while. You want to go walk the lake? You want to go grab a Gordo's burrito? You want to something like this? And then you're face to face, and you've already now made that engagement. Then that could lead to maybe they know somebody that's selling in real estate. If they see you and they're there, they know you're a realtor. You're catching up. That could come onto the mind. And I was blown away. I think I don't know how many comments, but there were maybe 66 or something, which is incredible. So to use that as a platform to generate leads, I mean, it's not like you're doing it right off the bat, but you're creating engagement. And I think for them to have a platform where they allow people to do that, and 1 billion people are on per day, like you can't beat that.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. And I've seen that post go around with several people. So it's funny that you bring that up. Now, the one thing I see everyone not do is engage with people that respond.
Sure.
And it feels like a lot of people in real estate, and this is across every industry of business owners and self-employed people, they think everyone should know that they are in a certain business, sure. Right? Mm-hmm. And the problem is, no. Everyone's attention, they don't even know what their cousin does for their business, right?
That's absolutely true.
So I think the engagement is perfect because it's a conversation starter, and you jump into that conversation of, oh, what states do you live in? Or you message them, hey, I lived in this state too, and exactly what you said. So that's perfect. Mm-hmm. Let's transition over to 1031 exchanges. Sure. We were briefly talking just prior to recording, and you said you haven't really had a lot of experience with 1031 exchanges. And in fact, most agents have never done a 1031 exchange, yet it's a very common word, very common to see classes held on 1031 exchanges. What's your experience with 1031?
Sure. Okay, well, a realtor I work with here, her name is Kumi Ha. She had a listing out in Walnut Creek, which was a condo. And she referred me to work with a buyer that had contacted her. And I ended up representing them, and we put in an offer. And during that time, they're like, oh, we're doing a 1031 exchange. We have a property in San Francisco that we're selling. And it's no problem. It's going to close. It's probably going to be cash, no problem. We're going to put in the offer. So we put in the offer on Kumi's listing. And it was contingent upon selling their property as a 1031 exchange. Now, it got a little more interesting because Kumi's seller of that condo actually had put an offer, I believe it was in Fairfield, on a home in Fairfield, and they had their offer accepted. So that offer was accepted, but it was contingent on her selling her property, which then tied into us, which we had to sell the property, or they had to sell the property in San Francisco, which would allow us to buy. So,
Okay, so you were representing the buyer
uh-huh.
on that transaction,
Yes.
and your buyer had to sell their property in San Francisco.
With another realtor.
Okay.
So that also made it a little more difficult because the communication, there was a delay. I didn't always know exactly what was going on. But when I first spoke with him, he's like, there's no problem. We're going to close early. Don't even think about it. Well, of course, it turned out to be a problem. And they couldn't sell their house. For whatever reason, there was a problem with insurance or the financing, but they could not get that buyer of the San Francisco home to close on their home. So we had to continually delay on buying Kumi's listing, but she had her offer now accepted with the seller in Fairfield. So now it's two principals, the seller of the Fairfield property, the seller of the Walnut Creek property, applying pressure, right? So I think that was in my second
And on
year.
the buyer side, you and Kumi are having to apply pressure.
Absolutely.
On those
On the
listing
San
agents.
Francisco, on the San Francisco listing agent over there. It ended up working out. I think it was delayed like a month and a half or two, and they were still able to do the 1031 exchange. And it went through, but it was a lot of pressure all around because there's multiple properties, and also being a 1031 exchange, they couldn't buy the home until they sold the one in San Francisco. So I think it's a great tool if you can pull it off, but there's definitely pressure going on with that, and that was my experience with the 1031 exchange. And I might have done another one now. Actually, I did. I actually closed one on Monday, but
Okay, congrats on that closing. I mean, when people ask, or they mention that real estate agents sometimes get paid really big commission checks, right? And what do you get for that value? And what people don't understand is that they're paying for time.
Mm-hmm.
The real estate agent is handling all these negotiations, everything behind the scene, everything that's stressful, so that you as a client are only getting the tip of the iceberg of it all, where you're just making the big final decisions.
Sure.
And the agent is working on your behalf to handle everything else. And you're paying for the time of not having to deal with it.
Absolutely.
During your regular normal hour jobs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think Mark makes a great point with regard to time. And also, when we're trying to sleep at night, this is on our mind.
It is.
This keeps us up thinking. The great part of sleep is when you wake up, there's usually your brain's been thinking is good resolution. But it's definitely it's literally 24/7.
Yeah, and when you think of the number of parties involved in that whole chain, I mean, you have three transactions. You have that would be 4 different clients that you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
You have 4 different agents you're working with. And not only that, you probably have 3 escrow companies. You have 3 lending companies. I mean, it's ridiculous, the whole connection.
Absolutely. And I think I'm going to kind of flash back to the restaurant too, is, a lot of the times when people aren't happy, their food's late, or maybe you messed up and didn't put their order in, or you got it wrong, or whatever, that's when they get angry, right? And being able to kind of smooth that out, right? I think that's a trait that all realtors have. And I believe Mark mentioned on a previous podcast, focusing on the solution and not the problem, right? And I think that's exactly right. Like if all the problems come up, and they will, you figure out how you can communicate to people, that everything's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. And what can I do to help? What can I do to help this problem?
Yeah, the faster you forget about the problem and start focusing on the solution, the faster it gets handled, the better you look. I mean, if you keep focusing on the problem, trying to put blame on other people, on, hey, this person did that and that's why it all messed up, who cares? Mm-hmm. Just fix it.
You got
Find a way to fix it.
That's absolutely right.
Now, I assume you work mainly with buyers right now.
I do.
Do you work with quite a few listings as well?
Those are actually starting to come around.
Usually happens later on in your career. They start to come by.
It's really interesting. It's in the beginning, for me, and I'm sure a lot of other agents too, you work mostly with buyers. And, I came up on 4 years in October, and what's been interesting is some of those original buyers in the beginning have referred me to people that want to sell their property. So it seems like there's a transition happening right now where I'm getting more people calling me and say, hey, I want to sell my house, as opposed to in the beginning where you're like, selling, yeah, right. You might get one or two, but it's not gonna be the same amount that are coming as people looking to buy homes, or people that are referring you to other buyers because you did a good job for them. It only comes when, maybe they've been in the home for about 2 years and they're maybe thinking about selling, or they have a friend that's selling and they say, hey, Colin's a great guy, blah, blah.
Yeah, and if you're in the business for many years and you're starting to get to that point where many of your clients that you help represent to buy are now thinking about possibly selling, maybe buying a second home, they may have to relocate for work and have to sell their home. But eventually, when you get to about the 7-8 year mark, you start seeing a lot of your old buyer clients come back as sellers.
Sure.
And then that's when the listings pick up.
Sure. I'm in complete agreement.
And you see that.
I do. And I think too, part of it is like, I think most people, they want to see that you've been in the business for amount of time and you're actually doing it, right? Because when you first start off, they're like, psh, you're just a bartender. What are you doing trying to sell real estate? This little side hustle, But after you kind of establish yourself and you start doing good jobs, I think people then, if they know what you're doing, and you obviously have to make yourself present and put it out there on Instagram and Facebook and let people know what you do and how you can help, then it comes back to you.
So how do you let people know what you do? How do you advertise and market yourself and your services?
Sure. I think Instagram and Facebook, I actually use Instagram way more than Facebook, but I think just constantly putting up posts, whether it's a home that I'm checking out, or a home that's listed, or a closing with a buyer, or anything that has to do with real estate, which is actually my life. If I put that out there, if I go see friends that I haven't seen in 4 or 5 months, they're like, oh, wow, Colin, you're doing so well. And I haven't had a conversation with them. I haven't had a phone call with them. I haven't seen them in 4 months, right? But they are on Instagram and they see that. And even if they don't like or comment, that is it's constantly present. Or like, hey, you've been on vacation. Oh, things must be going very well. And that, I forget who said it, but it's like, you want to give, the image of success, so you close a home, you put that out. I think they had that back in the day where you'd write, a mailer to the community and you
just sold listings.
Yeah.
I just sold this place. I can sell yours, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So they see that you're working, but Instagram literally does that for me, where I post what I do, house I tour, or whatever having to do with that, that day in real estate, I put it up there. People know. And the next time I see them, they know. And that could be somebody in Seattle that I'm not seeing, that I'm friends with. They moved to Seattle, and I get a call like, hey, our tenant decided to move out of our place. What's the value? We're thinking about selling it. We're going to be ready in February. If I didn't do Instagram, I don't have that.
Now, do you do Instagram ads? Do you pay for ads?
I have done Instagram ads, and it could be because I'm doing it wrong, but I feel that the posts that I do just naturally of the day have worked a lot better. And I'll go on to the analytics on Facebook to see kind of how much they're reaching. And the Instagram ads are not as reaching as many people or having the engagement as just a free post that I do.
Yeah. Try and test a few different posts, different types of material, and try to target and really target a specific group, specific demographic based on your page. Like, for example, on my Facebook page, I noticed that 75% of my followers are females between the ages of 24 and 44.
Well, he's a good looking guy here, so
well, thank
he
you
has
for
that going for
him. But because of that, now I target my entire ads toward that demographic.
Wow.
And I get the biggest engagement from them. So you have to know the target group and your audience. And when you know that, you can you save a lot of money, because right now I'm spending about maybe $400 or $500 a month in Facebook ads and Instagram ads.
Sure.
And I'm able to reach anywhere from 40, 50, 60,000 individuals per month, as opposed to spending $500 on one mailing campaign
Sure.
that reaches 200 people, right?
Mailings, I that's which when I started, do not do mailings, do not do postcard, do not. There's
Well,
other
this stuff,
ways to.
it still works. It's just way too expensive.
Sure.
Way too expensive.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so before we end it, because we are out of time here.
Okay.
You were a bartender.
Uh-huh.
You have to tell us what your favorite cocktail recipe is.
Okay. For me, I guess my favorite cocktail is vodka and lemonade. It sounds very simple, and it is. But if you use fresh lemonade, and any type of vodka and just really good lemonade, it's, I think, one of the best drinks. It's been my favorite in all the years I bartended. But that's that's kind of what it is.
Perfect. Simple. Easy to make. Vodka lemonade.
Vodka lemonade.
Well, thank you for being on the podcast. And if someone wants to contact you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
They can find me on Instagram. It's Colin Davies Realtor. Also, Colin Davies Realtor on Facebook. Directly on cell phone if you want. Text 510-435-3624. But all that information you can also find on Instagram. Really easy to find. And Facebook as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, of course.
I'm very impressed that you do this, and it's growing, and that's huge. We definitely need more of this, as realtors and also young realtors, and you pushing this and progressing this is a big help, I think, to the industry.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Thank you to our guest, Colin Davis, for coming out. He is with Security Pacific Real Estate. Make sure to hit him up. Follow him on Instagram and all social media platforms. Thank you again for listening to the podcast. Please rate the podcast, provide any feedback, like, comment, and share, and do not forget to subscribe. I really, really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.